I kissed my best friend's mother in a hotel room on a Tuesday night, and when her son found out 3 months later, he swore he'd never forgive either of us. But standing in that shattered living room, watching everything I'd built fall apart, I realized the truth. I didn't regret it. Not for a second. If you want to see how far love can push a man past his limits, stay with me until the end. Drop a like, comment where you're watching from, and let's see how far this story travels. The thing about routine is that it tricks you into believing you're safe. Wake up at 6. Make coffee. Pack Emma's lunch. Check her backpack twice because she always forgets her library book. Drive her to school. Smile at Mrs. Peterson. Go to work. Answer emails. Fix other people's code. Come home. Dinner. Homework. Bedtime story. Repeat. At 32, Ethan Cole had perfected the art of predictability. His life moved like clockwork, each day a carbon copy of the last, and he told himself that was exactly what he wanted, what he needed, because anything else, anything that deviated from the plan, meant risk, and risk meant the possibility of loss, and Ethan Cole had already lost enough for one lifetime. Emma's mother had left when their daughter was 2. No fight, no affair, just a note on the kitchen counter that said, "I can't do this anymore," and a forwarding address in Portland that turned out to be fake. For 3 years, Ethan had been both mother and father, therapist and playmate, the one who dried tears and the one who taught Emma how to ride a bike. He'd become an expert at being enough. Most days he believed it. It was Jake Martinez who broke the pattern. 25, effortlessly charming, with the kind of confidence that came from never having experienced real consequence. Jake worked 2 desks over at the software firm where Ethan spent 40 hours a week writing code that kept other people's websites from crashing. They weren't close. Not really. Jake would swing by Ethan's desk to complain about deadlines or show him memes during lunch breaks, but their friendship lived entirely within office walls. Until the Friday, Jake leaned against Ethan's cubicle and said, "You need to get out more." Ethan didn't look up from his monitor. "I get out." "To where? Parent-teacher conferences?" "Those count." "They don't." Jake tapped his knuckles on the desk. "Look, my mom's throwing this thing tomorrow night. Networking event, but fancy, open bar, decent food, interesting people. You should come." "I don't do networking events." "You don't do anything?" Jake's grin was infuriatingly persistent. "Come on, man. Bring a suit. Show up for an hour. I promise you won't spontaneously combust from social interaction." Ethan finally turned, eyebrow raised. "Your mom throws networking events?" "Yeah, she's... Jake hesitated, like he was searching for the right words. "She's kind of a big deal. Tech stuff. You'd probably find it boring, but the venue's nice and the whiskey's free." It should have been easy to say no. Ethan had 1,000 excuses ready. Emma had a soccer game. He had laundry to fold. He needed to meal prep for the week. But something in Jake's expression made him pause. There was a challenge there, buried under the casual tone. An assumption that Ethan would decline. That he always declined. "What time?" Ethan heard himself say. Jake's eyebrows shot up. "Seriously? Don't make me regret it." "7. I'll text you the address." Jake pushed off the desk, already moving toward the break room. "And Ethan, wear something that doesn't have coffee stains." The venue was the kind of place Ethan had only seen in movies. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Marble floors that clicked under dress shoes. Waiters in crisp white shirts carrying trays of champagne. He felt immediately out of place, even in the navy suit he'd bought for Emma's kindergarten graduation and worn exactly twice since. Jake found him near the entrance, looking annoyingly comfortable in a charcoal blazer. "You made it. I'm leaving in an hour." "Fair." "Come on. I'll introduce you around." The next 40 minutes passed in a blur of handshakes and business cards Ethan would never use. Tech investors, startup founders, a woman who spent 10 minutes explaining her app for rating public restrooms. Ethan nodded politely, counted the minutes, and wondered if Emma's babysitter would judge him for coming home early. He was calculating his escape route when Jake touched his shoulder. "Hey, there's someone I want you to meet." Ethan turned and forgot how to breathe. She stood near the windows, silhouetted against the city lights, talking to a small circle of people who seemed to hang on her every word. Early 30s, dark hair pulled back in a way that looked effortless but probably wasn't, wearing a black dress that suggested she had nothing to prove. but it was her posture that caught him. Straight-backed, controlled, like she was used to being the most important person in any room and found it exhausting. "That's my mom," Jake said, and Ethan's stomach dropped. "That's Adriana Vale." "Yeah." Jake started walking toward her, and Ethan had no choice but to follow. "Fair warning, she's intense. Don't take it personally." Intense didn't begin to cover it. Up close, Adriana Vale was even more striking. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that seemed to catalog everything in a single glance. The kind of beauty that felt almost dangerous. When she turned to face them, Ethan saw Jake's features reflected in hers. The same strong jaw, the same assessing gaze. "Mom, this is Ethan. We work together." Her handshake was firm, professional. "Ethan, what do you do?" "Back-end development. Nothing exciting." The corner of her mouth lifted. Nothing exciting keeps the exciting things running. It should have been a throwaway line, the kind of polite nothing people said at networking events. But the way she said it, like she actually meant it, made Ethan's chest tighten. "Mom's the CEO of Valcor," Jake said, pride creeping into his voice. "Maybe you've heard of it." Ethan hadn't. Adriana seemed to sense this and waved a dismissive hand. "We do cloud infrastructure. Boring, unless you're the one paying for server crashes." Her attention shifted to Jake. "I thought you were introducing me to investors tonight." "I am. Later. Ethan just got here." "Then I won't monopolize your time." She looked back at Ethan, and for a second, just a second, something flickered in her expression. Curiosity, maybe. Or recognition of something neither of them had words for yet. "It was nice meeting you." "You too." She moved away, pulled into another conversation, and Ethan released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Jake was grinning. "She liked you." "How could you possibly know that?" "Because she actually looked at you. Trust me, that's rare." Jake grabbed 2 glasses of champagne from a passing waiter and handed one to Ethan. "She's not big on small talk, or people in general, but she engaged." For 30 seconds. That's longer than most get. Ethan wanted to argue, but his eyes had already drifted back across the room, finding her without meaning to. She was laughing at something someone said, but it didn't reach her eyes. Everything about her seemed carefully constructed, like she'd learned long ago that letting people in was a liability. He understood that better than he wanted to admit. Ethan told himself he'd leave after an hour. He stayed for 3. Not because of the free whiskey or the fascinating conversations, though the whiskey was decent and some of the startup founders were less insufferable than expected. He stayed because every 20 minutes, his gaze would drift across the room and land on Adriana Vale. And sometimes, not every time, but enough to make his pulse kick up, she'd be looking back. It was stupid, reckless. She was Jake's mother, for one thing. For another, she lived in a world so far removed from his own that they might as well have been on different planets. She probably had assistants and board meetings, and a calendar booked 6 months out. Ethan had a 5-year-old who thought mac and cheese was a food group. And yet, at 10:30 the crowd had thinned. Jake was deep in conversation with a venture capitalist, gesturing wildly about some project Ethan didn't understand. Ethan found himself on the balcony, nursing his 3rd drink and staring at the city lights like they held answers. Hiding? He turned. Adriana stood in the doorway, champagne flute in hand, looking more relaxed than she had all night. Or maybe just more tired. "Observing," Ethan said. "Liar." She stepped onto the balcony, leaning against the railing beside him. Up close, he could see the faint lines around her eyes, the way her shoulders sagged slightly when she thought no one was watching. "Jake said you have a daughter." "Emma, she's 5. What's she like?" The question surprised him. Most people asked about custody arrangements or made sympathetic noises about single parenting. "Stubborn, funny, obsessed with dinosaurs, even though all her friends are into princesses." He paused. "She's the best thing I ever did." Adriana's expression softened. "Jake talks about you sometimes. Says you're the only person in the office who doesn't treat him like an idiot." "He's not an idiot. He's just young. He's 25. When I was 25, I was running my first startup." She took a sip of champagne, her gaze distant. "I missed most of his childhood building companies. Thought I was setting an example. Turns out I was just absent." The honesty caught Ethan off guard. This wasn't networking small talk. This was real. He seems like he turned out okay, Ethan said carefully. He did. No thanks to me. She set her glass on the railing. Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life? Like you made all the right moves, checked all the right boxes, and somehow ended up in the wrong place anyway? Ethan's throat tightened. Every day. Their eyes met and something passed between them, an understanding that didn't need words. For a moment, the noise of the party faded, the city lights blurred, and there was only this. Two people who had spent so long building walls that they'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen. I should get back inside, Adriana said, but she didn't move. Yeah, me too. Neither of them moved. Ethan? She stopped, whatever she'd been about to say dying on her lips. Instead, she reached out and touched his hand, just briefly. Her fingers were warm. Thank you for coming tonight. I almost didn't. I'm glad you did. She turned and walked back inside, and Ethan stood on the balcony for another 10 minutes, trying to convince himself that the sudden ache in his chest meant nothing. He thought about her all weekend. It was ridiculous. They'd spoken twice, 3 times if he counted Jake's introduction. She probably talked to 100 people at that event and wouldn't remember his name by Monday. But Ethan couldn't shake the image of her on the balcony, the vulnerability in her voice when she asked if he ever felt like he was in the wrong life. On Monday, Jake swung by his desk with coffee. So, what'd you think? Ethan kept his eyes on his code. About what? The event. My mom. The free booze. It was fine. Fine. Jake dragged out the word, grinning. You stayed until almost 11. That's not fine. That's practically enthusiastic for you. I was being polite. Right, sure. Jake leaned against the desk, lowering his voice. Hey, random question. You single? Ethan's fingers froze on the keyboard. Why? Just curious. You never talk about dating. Because I don't date. I have a 5-year-old. So? Plenty of single parents date. Not this one. Ethan finally looked up. Where's this coming from? Jake shrugged, too casual. My mom asked about you. Everything in Ethan's chest went still. What? Yeah. Sunday brunch, completely out of nowhere. That Ethan you work with, is he seeing anyone? I told her I didn't know, but I figured I'd check. Jake's grin widened. I think she liked you. Don't be ridiculous. I'm serious. She never asks about people I work with, ever. Ethan's mind raced. This was dangerous territory. Jake was his friend, maybe his only friend who wasn't a parent at Emma's school. And Adriana was Jake's mother. There were lines you didn't cross, rules that existed for good reasons. But the memory of her hand on his, the quiet understanding in her eyes. It doesn't matter, Ethan said firmly. Even if that were true, which it's not, it would be a terrible idea. Why? Because she's your mom, Jake. So, you're both adults. It's complicated. Life's complicated. Doesn't mean you avoid it. Jake straightened, suddenly serious. Look, I'm not trying to set you up or anything weird like that. I'm just saying she doesn't connect with people easily, and you made her smile. That's not nothing. Before Ethan could respond, Jake's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, swore softly. I gotta take this. Think about it, yeah? He was gone before Ethan could say no. 3 days later, Ethan received a LinkedIn message. Adriana Vale. It was good meeting you last week. If you're interested in discussing cloud architecture for small businesses, I'd love to buy you coffee. No pressure. Ethan stared at the message for a full minute. This was a professional offer, networking, completely innocent. He could decline politely, and that would be the end of it. His fingers moved before his brain caught up. Ethan Cole. Coffee sounds good. When works for you? Her reply came within minutes. Adriana Vale. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. There's a place on 5th Street, Greystone Cafe. Quiet. Good espresso. Ethan Cole. I'll be there. He closed his laptop and stared at the ceiling, heart pounding. This was a mistake. He knew it was a mistake. Everything about this screamed bad idea. The fact that she was Jake's mother, that they lived in completely different worlds, that Ethan had spent the last 3 years avoiding exactly this kind of complication. But when he closed his eyes, he saw her on that balcony, raw and real in a way that made his chest ache. Just coffee, he told himself. One conversation. Then he'd walk away and everything would go back to normal. He almost believed it. So, Greystone Cafe was tucked between a bookstore and a vintage record shop, the kind of place that looked like it had been there forever. Ethan arrived 10 minutes early and immediately regretted it. He ordered coffee he didn't want, sat at a corner table, and tried not to look like a man on the edge of doing something monumentally stupid. Adriana walked in at exactly 2 o'clock. She'd traded the elegant dress for dark jeans and a simple sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. Somehow, she looked even more beautiful. She spotted him immediately, smiled. A real smile, not the polite version from the networking event, and crossed to his table. You came. You asked. She ordered tea, settled into the chair across from him, and for a moment they just looked at each other. The cafe hummed with quiet conversation, the hiss of the espresso machine, the clink of ceramic mugs. Normal sounds. A normal afternoon. Except nothing about this felt normal. I should confess something, Adriana said finally. I didn't actually invite you here to talk about cloud architecture. Ethan's pulse kicked up. No? No. She traced the rim of her mug with one finger, not quite meeting his eyes. I wanted to see if I imagined it. Imagined what? The balcony. That moment. She looked up, and the vulnerability in her gaze nearly undid him. People don't usually... She stopped, frustrated with herself. I'm not good at this. At what? Being honest. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've spent 15 years building companies, managing boards, staying 3 steps ahead of everyone. You learn to control every variable, every impression, and then you show up and say 5 sentences and suddenly I can't stop thinking about whether I've been living the wrong life. Ethan's throat went dry. Adriana, I know this is insane. We've spoken twice. You're Jake's friend. I'm his mother. Every rational part of my brain is screaming at me to apologize and walk away. Her fingers tightened around her mug. But I can't. The weight of her words hung between them. Ethan knew he should say something sensible, something about boundaries and complications and all the reasons this couldn't work. Instead, what came out was, I haven't stopped thinking about you either. Her breath caught. Ethan, I know all the same things you know. I know this is a terrible idea. He leaned forward, unable to stop himself. But when you asked if I ever felt like I was in the wrong place, I felt that way for 3 years, every single day, until that balcony. Adriana's eyes glistened. What are we doing? I don't know. This can't go anywhere. You understand that, right? Jake can't know. No one can know. Even as she said it, Ethan knew they'd already crossed a line. Maybe they'd crossed it on the balcony. Maybe the moment their eyes met across that crowded room. It didn't matter. They were here now. So what do we do? He asked. Adriana reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. We take it slow. We figure it out as we go. And we're careful. Careful, Ethan repeated. Very careful. But her hand didn't move from his. They stayed for 2 hours, talking about everything except what they were doing. She told him about building Veilcore from nothing, the endless 16-hour days, the investors who didn't take her seriously until she made them millions. He told her about Emma, about midnight fevers and lost library books, and the fierce, overwhelming love of watching your daughter discover the world. When they finally left, the sun was setting, painting the street in gold. They stood on the sidewalk, neither wanting to be the first to leave. I should go, Adriana said. Board meeting at 7. Of course. She turned to leave, then paused. Ethan? Yeah? Same time next week? He should say no. Should end this before it became something neither of them could control. I'll be here. Her smile could have lit the whole city. Next week became the week after. Coffee turned into dinner at quiet restaurants across town where no one they knew would see them. Adriana would text him late at night, just simple things. How was Emma's soccer game? Or investor meeting from hell? Tell me something good. Ethan found himself checking his phone constantly, heart jumping every time her name appeared. He told himself it was harmless. They were just talking, building a friendship. But friendships didn't make your pulse race when you saw their name. Friendships didn't leave you lying awake at night remembering the way they laughed. Friendships didn't feel like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing one more step would send you falling and being unable to turn back. Jake noticed something was different. "You seem happier," he said one afternoon, dropping into the chair by Ethan's desk. "What's going on?" Guilt twisted in Ethan's gut. "Nothing. Just sleeping better." "Right. Nothing." Jake's grin was knowing. "You meeting someone?" "No?" "Liar. You've got that look." "What look?" "The one that says you're thinking about someone when you should be working." Jake leaned back, smug. "Come on. Who is she?" "If you only knew," Ethan thought. "There's no one. I'm focused on Emma." "Sure you are." Jake's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. "Weird. My mom's asking if you're free for dinner Friday." Something about discussing a consulting opportunity for Veilcore. Ethan's heart stopped. "She is?" "Yeah, I told her you were probably busy." Jake looked up. "Unless you're interested?" Ethan forced his voice to stay steady. "I could probably make it work." "Seriously? I figured you'd bail. It's a professional opportunity. Be stupid to pass it up." "Huh." Jake studied him for a long moment, and Ethan fought the urge to squirm. "All right, I'll tell her you're in." When Jake left, Ethan pulled out his phone. Sure enough, there was a message from Adriana. "Adriana, dinner Friday? My place. Jake will be out with friends. We need to talk." Ethan, "About what?" Adriana, "About what happens next." Ethan stared at the words, his heart pounding. This was it. The moment where they either stepped back or stepped forward into something that could destroy everything. His fingers moved. "Ethan, I'll be there. Come on." Friday came too fast and not fast enough. Ethan dropped Emma at her grandmother's, citing a work dinner he couldn't get out of. The lie tasted bitter, but not bitter enough to stop him. He drove across town to the address Adriana had sent, his hands tight on the steering wheel. Her house was in one of those neighborhoods where every home cost more than Ethan would make in 10 years. Modern architecture, floor-to-ceiling windows, a driveway that could fit 4 cars. He almost turned around, but then the door opened and Adriana was there, barefoot in jeans and a soft sweater, her hair down, looking nothing like a CEO, and everything like the woman who'd sat across from him at that cafe and admitted she couldn't stop thinking about him. "You came," she said softly. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "Part of me hoped you'd be smarter than this." "Too late for that?" She stepped aside, and Ethan walked into her house, into the next chapter of whatever this was becoming. The interior was beautiful, but strangely impersonal. Expensive furniture, art on the walls, everything perfectly arranged. It looked like a showroom, like no one actually lived here. "I ordered Thai food," Adriana said, closing the door. "I can't cook to save my life." "Neither can I. Emma survives on pasta and chicken nuggets. Jake lived on pizza and cereal until he moved out." She moved to the kitchen, gesturing for him to follow. "Wine? Please." She poured 2 glasses, handed him one, and they stood there in her immaculate kitchen, neither sure what to say. All the easy conversation from the past few weeks had evaporated, replaced by the electric tension of being alone together for the first time. "We should eat," Adriana said finally. They made it through dinner talking about safe things, work, Emma's upcoming school play, a documentary Adriana had watched about ocean conservation. But underneath every word was the unspoken question, what are we doing? After dinner, they moved to the living room. Adriana poured more wine. Ethan tried to focus on anything except how close she was sitting, the faint scent of her perfume, the way her fingers drummed nervously against her glass. "I need to tell you something," she said abruptly. Ethan's chest tightened. "Okay." "I haven't felt this way about anyone in years, maybe ever." She set her glass down, turning to face him fully. "My ex-husband, Jake's father. We were married for 10 years, and I never once felt with him what I feel when you walk into a room." "Adriana, I'm terrified," she continued, her voice breaking slightly. "Because I know how this ends. Someone gets hurt. Probably everyone gets hurt. But I can't. I've tried to stop thinking about you, and I can't." Ethan set his own glass down, his hand shaking slightly. "You think I'm not terrified? You're Jake's mother, my friend's mother. If he finds out—" "I know. This could destroy our friendship, your relationship with him. I know. We should stop this, right now, before it goes any further. I know. They stared at each other, both knowing they'd already made their choice. They'd made it the moment Ethan agreed to come here. Maybe even earlier. Maybe on that balcony.
Ethan, Adriana whispered, if you're going to leave, you need to do it now. He should. Every rational thought in his head screamed at him to walk out that door and never look back. Instead, he reached for her hand. Her fingers laced with his, and everything else fell away. The guilt, the fear, the knowledge that this was wrong, all of it dissolved the moment she leaned in and pressed her forehead to his. I'm not leaving, he said quietly. You should. I know.
And then they were kissing, desperate and raw, 3 weeks of tension and restraint finally breaking. Adriana's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and Ethan felt something inside him crack open, something he'd kept locked away since the day Emma's mother left. This was what it felt like to want someone, to need someone. Not because they completed you or fixed you, but because when you were with them, the wrong life finally felt right. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adriana's eyes were wet. What do we do now? She asked. Ethan brushed a strand of hair from her face, his hand trembling. We figure it out. Together. Jake can't know. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I know. This has to stay between us. It will. She kissed him again, softer this time, and Ethan let himself fall. He knew the cost. Knew that secrets had weight, that lies would accumulate, that eventually everything would come crashing down. But in that moment, holding Adriana Vale in her too-perfect house, feeling more alive than he had in years, he didn't care. For the first time since Emma's mother left, Ethan Cole was willing to risk everything, and that terrified him more than anything. The first lie was the hardest. It came on a Wednesday morning when Jake stopped by Ethan's desk with coffee and a grin that made Ethan's stomach twist. So, my mom mentioned you guys had dinner last week, Jake said, setting down the cup. How'd the consulting thing go? Ethan's fingers froze over his keyboard. The memory of that night flooded back. Adriana's mouth on his, her hands pulling him closer, the way she'd whispered his name like a prayer and a confession all at once. They'd stayed up until 3 in the morning, talking and kissing and trying to convince themselves they could keep this contained. It went well, Ethan said, hating how easily the words came. She had some interesting ideas about scalability. Cool. She seems to like you. Jake took a sip of his coffee, oblivious, which is weird because she usually hates everyone. Maybe I'm special. Maybe. Jake's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. Investor call. Catch you later? Yeah, later. The moment Jake was out of sight, Ethan pulled out his phone. There were 3 messages from Adriana, all sent in the past hour. Adriana. Can't stop thinking about Friday night. Adriana. This is dangerous. Adriana. When can I see you again? Ethan stared at the words, his heart pounding against his ribs. He should end this. Send a message saying they'd made a mistake, that they needed to be smart, that the risk was too great. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Ethan. Tomorrow night. Same place? Her reply came in seconds. Adriana. I'll leave the door unlocked. Ethan closed his eyes and tried to ignore the voice in his head, screaming that he was making the biggest mistake of his life. The next evening, he told Emma's grandmother he had another work dinner. The lie tasted worse the second time, but not bad enough to stop him from driving across town to Adriana's house, his pulse racing with every mile. She answered the door in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked younger like this. Vulnerable. Real. Hi, she said softly. Hi. They stood there for a moment, the weight of what they were doing hanging between them. Then Adriana stepped back and Ethan walked inside, and the door closed behind him like the sealing of a pact neither of them could break. This time there was no pretense of dinner or wine or conversation. Adriana led him to the couch, and they fell into each other like drowning people reaching for air. Her kiss was desperate, almost frantic, and Ethan understood. This wasn't about passion or romance. This was about 2 people who'd been alone so long they'd forgotten what it felt like to be wanted. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Adriana pressed her face against his shoulder. "We can't keep doing this," she whispered. "I know. Jake will find out eventually." "I know. Everyone will hate us." "I know." Ethan tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Do you want to stop?" Adriana's expression crumpled. "No. Neither do I." She kissed him again, softer this time, and Ethan felt the last of his resistance crumble. They were past the point of turning back. Whatever consequences waited for them, and there would be consequences, he knew that with bone-deep certainty, they'd face them when they came. For now, all that mattered was this moment, this woman, this feeling of being alive after years of just surviving. They talked until midnight, curled together on the couch, like teenagers hiding from the world. Adriana told him about building her first company at 23, the investors who laughed at her, the late nights and early mornings, and the slow grinding realization that success came at the cost of everything else. Her marriage had imploded when Jake was 12. She'd chosen the company. She always chose the company. "I missed his middle school graduation," she said quietly, her fingers tracing patterns on Ethan's arm. "Board meeting in Singapore. Couldn't reschedule. I sent flowers and told myself it was fine, that he'd understand. He never said anything, but I saw the way he looked at me when I got back, like I was a stranger who happened to live in his house." "He doesn't look at you like that now." "No, but it took years to fix. And there are still things—" She stopped, swallowing hard. "He doesn't tell me when he's struggling, doesn't ask for help. He learned early that I wouldn't be there, so why bother?" Ethan pulled her closer. "You're here now. Am I? Or am I just making another selfish choice?" She looked up at him, her eyes dark with guilt. "Sleeping with my son's friend. What kind of mother does that? The kind who's been alone too long, just like me. That's not an excuse." "I'm not saying it is." Ethan brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I'm saying I understand." Adriana closed her eyes, and for a moment she just breathed. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm falling for you, and it terrifies me." Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to say something reassuring, something that would make this easier. But there was nothing easy about this. Nothing safe. "I'm terrified too," he said instead. They fell asleep on the couch, tangled together, and Ethan woke at 4 a.m. in a panic. Emma. He'd told her grandmother he'd pick her up by 11. It was Thursday morning. He'd been here all night. He extracted himself carefully from Adriana's arms, trying not to wake her. She stirred anyway, blinking up at him in the dim light. "You're leaving?" "I have to get Emma." "Right, of course." She sat up, running a hand through her tangled hair. "Ethan, don't." He knew what she was going to say, that this was a mistake, that they needed to stop. "Please don't." "I was going to say be careful driving. You look exhausted." Something in his chest eased. "I will be." "Text me when you get home?" "Yeah." He kissed her forehead and left before he could talk himself into staying. The drive home felt surreal, like waking from a dream into a life that no longer fit right. By the time he picked up Emma, who chattered excitedly about the pancakes her grandmother made and the movie they'd watched, Ethan had nearly convinced himself that last night hadn't happened, that he'd imagined the whole thing. Then his phone buzzed. "Adriana." "I miss you already. Is that pathetic?" Ethan. "If it is, we're both pathetic." Adriana. "When can I see you again?" Ethan. "I don't know. Soon." Adriana. "Not soon enough." Emma looked up from her cereal. "Daddy? Why are you smiling?" "Am I?" "Uh-huh. You look happy." Ethan's throat tightened. "I am happy, sweetheart." "Good. You should smile more." She went back to her breakfast, oblivious to the way her father's world had tilted on its axis. The weeks that followed blurred together in a haze of stolen moments and mounting lies. Ethan became an expert at finding excuses. Late meetings, networking events, weekend conferences that didn't exist. He'd drop Emma at her grandmother's or arrange playdates with her friends, then drive across town to Adriana's house, where they'd spend hours talking and touching and pretending the rest of the world didn't exist. They were careful, obsessively so. Never went out in public together, never texted anything too explicit. Adriana would schedule fake business dinners, and Ethan would invent work obligations. To the outside world, they were barely acquaintances. But behind closed doors, they were building something neither of them had names for. "Tell me about Emma's mother," Adriana said one night, her head resting on Ethan's chest as they lay in her bed. Ethan stiffened. "Why?" "Because you never talk about her. And I want to know." He was quiet for a long time, his fingers absently stroking her hair. "There's not much to tell. We met in college, got married too young, had Emma. She left. That's the summary. I want the real story." Ethan exhaled slowly. "Her name was Sarah. She was so full of life when I met her. Spontaneous, adventurous, everything I wasn't. I thought that was what I needed. Someone to pull me out of my comfort zone. What happened? Turns out being spontaneous doesn't translate well to parenthood. She hated the routine, the diapers and the sleepless nights, and the way your whole life suddenly revolves around this tiny person who needs you constantly." His voice went flat, the old pain surfacing. "She started staying out later, missing bedtimes. I'd come home and find Emma alone in her crib crying because Sarah had gone to meet friends and lost track of time." Adriana's hand tightened on his chest. "I tried to make it work. Thought maybe she just needed space, that it would get easier. But it got worse. And then one morning, I woke up and she was gone. Just gone. Left a note saying she couldn't do it anymore, that she loved Emma, but she wasn't cut out to be a mother. Ethan, I haven't heard from her since. No calls, no birthday cards, nothing. For 3 years, I've been the only parent Emma has. And most days that's fine. I can handle it. But sometimes," his voice cracked, "sometimes I'm so tired I can barely stand. And I think about how easy it would be to just—" "Don't!" Adriana said fiercely, lifting her head to look at him. "Don't finish that sentence." "I wouldn't. I'd never leave her. But I understand why Sarah did. That's the part I hate most, that I understand." Adriana kissed him, soft and lingering. "You're nothing like her. You stayed. That's everything." "So did you, with Jake." "Barely. I was there physically, but I was absent in every way that mattered." She settled back against his chest. "We're a pair, aren't we? Two people who screwed up parenthood in opposite ways. At least we're self-aware. That doesn't make us less screwed up." "No," Ethan agreed, "but it makes me feel less alone." They fell into silence and Ethan felt something shift. This wasn't just physical anymore. Wasn't just two lonely people finding comfort. They were building something real, messy and complicated and probably doomed, but real. And that made the lies so much worse. Jake noticed the change in Ethan first. "You're distracted," he said one afternoon, appearing at Ethan's desk with his usual coffee delivery. "Everything okay?" "Fine, just tired." "You're always tired lately. Emma keeping you up?" "Something like that." Jake studied him for a moment, something unreadable in his expression. "You'd tell me if something was wrong, right?" Guilt churned in Ethan's stomach. "Of course." "Good, because you're my friend. I worry about you." The words hit like a punch to the gut. Ethan forced a smile. "I'm fine. Promise." But he wasn't fine. Every time he looked at Jake, laughing at lunch, complaining about deadlines, treating Ethan like a trusted friend, the weight of his betrayal grew heavier. He was lying to someone who'd shown him nothing but kindness, who'd invited him into his life, introduced him to his mother, trusted him. And Ethan had repaid that trust by sleeping with that mother behind closed doors. "I can't do this anymore," Ethan said that night, standing in Adriana's kitchen while she poured wine. She froze. "What?" "This. Us. The lying." He ran a hand through his hair, agitated. "Jake asked me today if everything was okay. Looked me right in the eye and said he worried about me. And I lied to his face. Ethan, he's my friend, Adriana. Maybe my only real friend. And I'm betraying him every single day." Adriana set the wine bottle down carefully. "What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. That we should tell him? That we should stop? Do you want to stop?" The question hung between them. Ethan thought about walking away, going back to his quiet, safe life. No more lies, no more guilt, just him and Emma and the comfortable numbness he'd perfected over 3 years. The thought made him feel like he was suffocating. "No," he admitted, "I don't want to stop." "Then we keep being careful." "Until when?"
Until he finds out. Maybe he won't.
That's naive and you know it. Ethan moved closer, his voice dropping. Secrets don't stay buried, Adriana. Eventually something will slip. A text message. Someone seeing us. And when it does, au pours. Beau riot.
I know. Her voice was small, vulnerable. I think about it constantly. What he'll say, how he'll look at me. But I can't. She pressed her hands to her face. I've been alone for so long. Built walls so high I forgot what it felt like to let someone in. And then you walked into that networking event and everything changed. Adriana, I love you. The words came out rushed, like she'd been holding them back and couldn't anymore. I know it's too soon and too complicated, and I have no right to feel this way, but I do. I love you, and the thought of losing you makes me want to break things. Ethan's heart stopped. He should walk away. Right now. Before this went any further. Instead, he crossed the kitchen and pulled her into his arms. I love you too, he whispered against her hair. And that's the problem. They held each other in the middle of her perfect, sterile kitchen, two people who'd found something real in the worst possible circumstances. Later, lying in bed with Adriana asleep beside him, Ethan stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out how this would end. There was no scenario where everyone walked away unscathed. Either they came clean and destroyed Jake's trust, or they kept lying until the truth inevitably surfaced. Either way, people would get hurt. Probably everyone would get hurt. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from Jake. Jake, hey man, want to grab lunch tomorrow? Haven't hung out much lately. Ethan's stomach twisted. He typed back quickly. Ethan, can't tomorrow. Swamped with Emma stuff. Maybe next week? Another lie. They were piling up now, accumulating like debt. Jake, no worries. Let me know when you're free. Ethan set the phone down and closed his eyes, trying to ignore the voice in his head that sounded suspiciously like his conscience. The thing about guilt is that it doesn't disappear. It accumulates in small moments, the way Jake smiled at him in the office, the sound of Emma asking why Daddy was always tired, the texts from Adriana that made his heart race and his stomach sink simultaneously. By the third month, Ethan had perfected the art of compartmentalization. At work, he was Jake's reliable friend. At home, he was Emma's devoted father. And in the stolen hours at Adriana's house, he was someone else entirely, someone who laughed freely and kissed without hesitation and allowed himself to want something just for himself. The lines between these versions of himself were starting to blur. I want you to meet Emma, he said one night, the words surprising even himself. Adriana looked up from where she was reading on the couch, her expression carefully neutral. What? Emma. I want you to meet her. Ethan, not as anything official, just as Jake's mom. We could do something casual. Dinner or... That's a terrible idea. Why? Because she's 5. Kids talk. What if she mentions it to Jake? She won't. We'll be careful. Adriana set her book aside, studying him. Why is this important to you? Ethan struggled to articulate the feeling that had been building for weeks. Because she's the most important person in my life, and you're... He stopped, the words catching. You're becoming that too. And keeping those parts of my life separate feels wrong. Everything about this is wrong, Ethan. I know, but it's also the most right thing I've felt in years. Adriana was quiet for a long time. Then softly, Okay, I'll meet her. But we do it somewhere public, neutral. And if at any point it feels like a bad idea, we stop. Ethan pulled her close, relief flooding through him. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This might be the worst decision we've made so far. Doubtful. That honor belongs to that first kiss. I don't regret that kiss. Neither do I. They arranged it for the following Saturday. A children's museum downtown, busy enough that no one would pay attention, casual enough that it wouldn't seem strange if anyone asked. Ethan told Emma they were meeting a friend. Adriana told Jake she had a networking event. More lies. Always more lies. Emma was bouncing with excitement when they arrived, her hand tight in Ethan's as they walked through the entrance. Is your friend here yet? Not yet, sweetheart. Let's look at the dinosaur exhibit while we wait. But Adriana was already there, standing near the entrance in jeans and a simple jacket, looking more nervous than Ethan had ever seen her. When she spotted them, something in her expression softened. "Hi," she said, crouching down to Emma's level. "You must be Emma. I'm Adriana." Emma studied her with the serious intensity only 5-year-olds could manage. "You're pretty." Adriana laughed, surprised. "Thank you. So are you." "Daddy says I look like my mom." The words hung in the air, awkward and sharp. Ethan tensed, but Adriana handled it smoothly. "Then your mom must be beautiful." "She left when I was little. I don't remember her." "Emma," Ethan started, but Adriana caught his eye, shaking her head slightly. "That must be hard," she said gently. Emma shrugged, the gesture too adult for her small frame. "It's okay. I have Daddy. He's the best." Ethan's throat tightened. Adriana stood, her eyes bright with something he couldn't name. "He is pretty great, isn't he?" They spent 2 hours at the museum, Emma chattering between them about dinosaurs and space and her upcoming school play. Adriana was surprisingly good with her, patient and engaged, asking questions that showed she was actually listening. Ethan watched them together and felt something dangerous blooming in his chest. This could be real. Not just the two of them hiding in her house, but something actual and whole. A family. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like hope. Near the end of the visit, Emma tugged on Adriana's sleeve. "Do you have kids?" "I do. A son. He's all grown up now." "Is he nice?" "Very nice. You'd like him." "Does he like dinosaurs?" Adriana smiled. "Not as much as you, I think." When it was time to leave, Emma hugged Adriana without prompting. "Can we see you again?" Adriana's eyes met Ethan's over Emma's head, something unspoken passing between them. "I'd like that," she said softly. That night, after Emma was asleep, Ethan's phone buzzed. "Adriana. She's incredible." "Ethan. She liked you." "Adriana. I wasn't expecting that to hurt so much." "Ethan. What do you mean?" "Adriana. Seeing what I could have had if I'd done things differently. Been a better mother to Jake. Built a different life." "Ethan. It's not too late." "Adriana. Isn't it? I'm 51 years old, sleeping with my son's friend in secret. I think I missed the exit for redemption a long time ago." "Ethan. You're 30 and you're not defined by your mistakes." "Adriana. That's generous." "Ethan. It's true. You showed up today. You were kind to my daughter. That matters." "Adriana. I love you." "Ethan. I love you too." "Adriana. We're going to get caught eventually, aren't we?" "Ethan. Probably." "Adriana. And Jake will never forgive us." "Ethan. Maybe, maybe not." "Adriana. You're more optimistic than I am." "Ethan. Or more naive." "Adriana. Come over tomorrow night?" "Ethan. I'll be there." He set his phone down and stared at the ceiling, knowing that every day they continued this, they were digging the hole deeper. But he couldn't stop. Couldn't walk away from the only thing that made him feel alive, even if it meant losing everything else. The beginning of the end came on a Tuesday. Ethan was at work when Jake appeared at his desk, his expression strange. "Hey, can we talk?" "Sure, what's up?" Jake glanced around, then lowered his voice. "Not here. Let's grab coffee." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Is everything okay?" "I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out." They walked to the cafe 2 blocks over in silence. Jake ordered for both of them, his movements stiff and mechanical. When they sat down, he didn't meet Ethan's eyes. "I need to ask you something," Jake said finally. "And I need you to be honest with me." Ethan's heart was pounding so hard he could barely hear. "Okay. Are you seeing someone?" The question caught him off guard. "What?" "You've been weird for months, distracted, making excuses. And yesterday my mom mentioned you'd helped her with something at the museum, which—" Jake stopped, shaking his head. "It doesn't add up." "Jake, just tell me the truth. Are you seeing someone?" Ethan had prepared for this moment, rehearsed what he'd say if Jake ever asked directly. But sitting here, looking into his friend's eyes, all those carefully constructed lies evaporated. "Yes," he said quietly. Jake's expression didn't change. "Who is it?" "I can't tell you that." Why not? Because it's complicated. Complicated how? Jake's voice was rising. Ethan, we're friends. If you're happy, I want to know about it. Unless... He stopped, something dawning in his eyes. Unless it's someone I know. Ethan said nothing, and his silence was answer enough. Who? Jake demanded. I can't. Who, Ethan?
The truth sat on Ethan's tongue, heavy and inevitable. He could lie, make up a name, buy himself more time, but he was so tired of lying. Your mother, he said, and watched Jake's world shatter. The coffee cup shattered against the floor. Jake was on his feet, his chair scraping back so violently it toppled over. The cafe went silent. Every head turned toward them. Ethan didn't move, didn't breathe, just watched as Jake's face cycled through shock, disbelief, and finally landed on something that looked like rage. You're lying, Jake said, his voice shaking. I'm not. That's not... Jake's hands clenched into fists. My mother? My mother? Jake, let me explain. Don't. The word came out like a whip crack. Don't you dare try to explain this. Ethan stood slowly, hands raised. Can we go somewhere private? Private? You want privacy? Jake laughed, high and bitter. That's rich coming from the guy who's been screwing my mother behind my back for months. A woman at the next table gasped. The barista was staring. Ethan felt his face burn, but he kept his voice steady. You're right to be angry, but please, let's talk about this somewhere else. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to see you. Jake's voice cracked. He pressed his palms against his eyes, breathing hard. How long? 3 months. 3 months. Jake dropped his hands, and Ethan saw tears on his face. 3 months you've been lying to me, looking me in the eye every single day, and lying. I know. Was it her idea? No, it just happened. Things like this don't just happen, Ethan. You make choices. You chose this. Jake's jaw worked. Does Emma know? The mention of his daughter sent ice through Ethan's veins. She met Adriana once, at the museum. She doesn't know she thinks we're just friends. Friends. Jake spat the word like poison. You know what? I actually believe that. When you started acting weird, when you kept making excuses, I thought maybe you were going through something. I worried about you, asked if you were okay, and the whole time you were... He couldn't finish the sentence. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't... Jake grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair. I need to go. Jake, wait. Don't follow me. Don't call me. Don't talk to me. Jake's eyes were red, his voice raw. And stay the hell away from my mother. He was gone before Ethan could respond, the cafe door slamming behind him. The silence that followed was suffocating. Ethan stood there, frozen, while everyone stared. His phone was already buzzing in his pocket. He knew who it was before he looked. Adriana. Jake just called. He knows. I'm coming over. Ethan. No, stay there. I'll come to you. Adriana. Ethan, please, just wait for me. He threw money on the table and walked out, barely seeing the street in front of him. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely grip his keys. The drive to Adriana's house passed in a blur of traffic lights and honking horns, and the echo of Jake's voice saying, You chose this. Adriana's front door was unlocked. She was pacing in the living room, still in her work clothes, her hair coming loose from its bun. When she saw him, her face crumpled. What did you tell him? The truth. Why? The word came out as a cry. Why would you do that? Because he asked me directly. I was tired of lying, Adriana. So you just told him, without warning me first? She pressed her hands to her face. He called me screaming. I've never heard him like that. He said things I can't. Ethan crossed the room and tried to pull her into his arms, but she pushed him away. Don't touch me right now. Adriana, I need to think. She was still pacing, her movements jerky and frantic. I need to figure out how to fix this. I don't think we can fix it. She whirled on him. We have to try. He's my son, Ethan. My son. I can't lose him over this. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to hurt him? Then why did you tell him?
Because he deserved the truth. Ethan's voice rose to match hers. We've been lying to him for 3 months, sneaking around like we're doing something shameful. Because it is shameful. We both knew that, and we did it anyway. So this is my fault? That's not what I said.
Sounds like it to me. Adriana's eyes flashed. You're the one who couldn't keep lying. You're the one who confessed without even talking to me first. And now my relationship with my son is destroyed because you had a crisis of conscience. The words hit like a slap. Ethan took a step back, something cold settling in his chest. Is that really what you think? I don't know what I think. I don't know anything anymore. She sank onto the couch, her face in her hands. He said he never wants to see me again. My son. The only family I have left. Ethan sat down beside her, careful not to touch. He's angry. He'll calm down eventually.
Will he? You don't know Jake like I do. When he's hurt, he shuts down completely. He cut his father out of his life for 2 years after the divorce. 2 years, Ethan. And that was just for cheating. This is so much worse. We didn't cheat. Didn't we? She looked at him, her eyes red. We betrayed his trust, lied to his face. I brought you into his life, told him you were a good guy, a friend, and then I slept with you the first chance I got. It wasn't like that.
Then what was it like? Explain it to me, because I can't make sense of any of this anymore. Ethan struggled to find words. I fell in love with you. I didn't plan it, didn't want it, but it happened, and I couldn't stop it. Love, she laughed bitterly. Is a love supposed to make everything hurt this much? Sometimes, yeah. I think it is. They sat in silence, the weight of everything pressing down. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the room in shades of orange and gold. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt like an ending. What do we do now? Adriana asked quietly. I don't know. Do we stop seeing each other? The question hung between them. Ethan thought about it, really thought about it, going back to his quiet life. No more lies, no more sneaking around. Just him and Emma and the safe, predictable routine he'd perfected. Is that what you want? He asked. I want my son back. That's not what I asked. Adriana turned to face him, her expression raw. I want both. I want you, and I want Jake to forgive me, and I want to not feel like the worst person in the world. But I can't have all of that, can I? Probably not. So I have to choose. Yeah. She was quiet for a long time, tears sliding down her face. I can't lose him, Ethan. I know I was a terrible mother. I know I put work first and missed years of his life, but he's all I have. If he cuts me out, I understand. Do you? Because you're asking me to choose between you and my son. I'm not asking you anything. I'm just... Ethan stood, unable to sit still anymore. I'm trying to figure out if what we have is worth the damage it's causing. And? What's your answer? He wanted to say yes. Wanted to tell her that she was worth everything, that they could weather this storm, that eventually Jake would understand. But standing in her living room with the ghost of Jake's broken voice echoing in his head, Ethan wasn't sure of anything anymore. I don't know, he admitted. Adriana's face went very still. Then maybe you should go. Adriana, please, I need to be alone right now. Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to stay and fix this somehow. But the look in her eyes was one he recognized, the same shuttered expression she'd worn the night they met, before he'd cracked through her walls. She was closing herself off again, rebuilding the defenses he'd spent months breaking down. I'll call you tomorrow, he said. Don't. I'll call you when I'm ready. When will that be? I don't know. He left without another word, and the sound of her door closing behind him felt terrifyingly final. The next 3 days were the longest of Ethan's life. At work, Jake's desk sat empty. He'd called in sick, according to their manager. Ethan's messages went unanswered. His calls went straight to voicemail. He tried texting an apology, tried explaining, tried everything he could think of. Nothing. Adriana wasn't responding either. He'd sent her 5 messages the first day, then forced himself to stop. She'd asked for space. He had to respect that, even if it was killing him. Emma noticed something was wrong. Daddy, are you sad? Just tired, sweetheart. You're always tired now. I know, I'm sorry. Is it because of work? Ethan pulled her into a hug, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. Work's just busy right now, but it'll get better soon. He hoped that was true. Wasn't sure he believed it. On the fourth day, Jake finally showed up at the office. Ethan saw him from across the room and his stomach clenched. He stood, intending to approach, but Jake's expression stopped him cold. There was nothing there. No anger, no hurt, just ice. Jake walked straight to their manager's office and didn't come out for 20 minutes. When he did, he went to his desk, packed his things into a box, and left without looking at Ethan once. Ethan's manager called him in 10 minutes later. Jake requested a transfer to the Seattle office, she said, her expression carefully neutral. Effective immediately. Do you know what that's about? Personal issues? Between you two? Ethan hesitated. Yeah. She studied him for a long moment. Do I need to be concerned about workplace conduct? No, it's nothing related to work. Good. Because Jake's a valuable employee and I'd hate to lose him permanently. She paused. Are you all right, Ethan? I'm fine. You don't look fine. I will be. Eventually. He left the office before she could ask more questions and spent the rest of the day staring at his computer screen, not seeing any of it. Jake was leaving, moving across the country to get away from him, from the situation, from the betrayal. His phone buzzed. Adriana, can we talk? Tonight? Ethan, yes. Where? Adriana, my place. 8 p.m. Ethan, I'll be there. He arrived at 7:50, too anxious to wait. Adriana answered the door looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were puffy, her hair unstyled, wearing the same clothes from the last time he'd seen her. Hi, she said softly. Hi. They stood there awkwardly, two people who'd spent months unable to keep their hands off each other, now not sure if they were allowed to touch. Come in, Adriana said finally. The house felt different, colder somehow. Or maybe that was just Ethan's imagination. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, a canyon of space between them. Jake's transferring to Seattle, Adriana said without preamble. He told me this morning, said he needs distance from both of us. I heard. He won't talk to me, won't answer my calls, just sent a text saying he needed time and space, and I should respect that. Her voice cracked. Ethan, I've lost him. Maybe not permanently. How can you say that? He's moving across the country because he can't stand to be near us. People say things they don't mean when they're hurt. Give him time. How much time? Months? Years? She pulled her knees to her chest, suddenly looking very small. I called his father, asked if he'd heard from Jake. Do you know what he said? He laughed. Said maybe now I'd understand what I put him through during the divorce. Ethan's jaw tightened. That's cruel. It's accurate. I destroyed my marriage for my career. Now I've destroyed my relationship with my son for... She stopped. For what? Ethan asked, something sharp in his voice. Say it. That's not fair. None of this is fair. But if you're going to finish that sentence, finish it. Adriana's eyes flashed. Fine. I destroyed my relationship with my son for a relationship that probably won't last anyway. Is that what you wanted to hear? The words hit like a physical blow. Ethan stood, needing to move. Is that what you really think? I don't know what I think anymore. I just know that my son hates me, and it's because of us. It's because we lied, not because we fell in love. What's the difference? The difference is that one we can apologize for. The other, Ethan turned to face her. If you regret what we have, just say so. Don't hide behind Jake's anger. I'm not hiding. Yes, you are. You're making this about him so you don't have to admit that maybe this scares you, that maybe letting someone in was a mistake. It was a mistake. The words exploded out of her. Look at the damage we've caused. Jake's leaving. Your friendship with him is destroyed. Emma met me thinking we were just friends, and now what? If we break up, she loses me too. Everyone gets hurt, and for what? For this. Ethan crossed to her, kneeling in front of the couch so they were eye level. For finding someone who understands what it's like to be alone. For feeling something real instead of just existing. For 3 months where I woke up every morning looking forward to the day because I knew I'd get to talk to you. Ethan, you asked what the difference is between lying and loving. The difference is that I'd do the lying part differently. I'd tell Jake from the start, deal with his anger honestly. But loving you? He took her hand, relieved when she didn't pull away. I wouldn't change that, even knowing how this ends. Tears were streaming down Adriana's face. How does it end? I don't know, but I know I don't want it to end yet. What if Jake never forgives us? Then we live with that. But we live with it together. She pulled her hand back, shaking her head. I can't choose you over my son. I'm not asking you to choose. Yes, you are. By asking me to keep doing this, you're asking me to prioritize our relationship over fixing things with Jake. Those aren't mutually exclusive. They feel mutually exclusive. She stood, wrapping her arms around herself. I think we need to stop seeing each other, at least for now. At least until I can figure out how to fix things with Jake. Ethan felt something in his chest crack. And then what? We pretend this never happened? I don't know. Maybe. Adriana, if you walk away now, there's no coming back from that. Why not? Because you'll have proven that I'm not worth fighting for. That the first time things get hard, you run. He moved closer, desperate. I know this is messy. I know Jake's hurt. But we can work through it if we do it together. Can we? Because it feels like we're just making it worse. She looked at him with such exhaustion that it hurt. I'm tired, Ethan. I'm so tired of carrying this guilt. Every time I look at my phone and there's no message from Jake, it's like a knife in my chest, and I know it's my fault. I know I caused this. We both caused this. Then maybe we both need to fix it, separately. The word separately felt like a door closing. Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to convince her they were stronger together, but he could see the decision already made in her eyes. Is this really what you want? He asked quietly. I want my son back, and if that means giving you up, her voice broke, then that's what I have to do. Ethan nodded, something numb spreading through his chest. Okay. If that's what you need, I won't fight you on it. He picked up his jacket from where he dropped it on the chair. But I need you to know something. What? I love you. Not the idea of you, not the way you make me feel. You, the woman who's terrified of letting people in. The one who thinks she failed as a mother but showed up to a children's museum anyway because it mattered to me. The one who's choosing her son even though it's breaking her heart. He walked to the door, his hand on the knob. So if you change your mind, if you decide that maybe we're worth fighting for, I'm not going anywhere. Ethan, don't. Just take care of yourself, Adriana. He left before she could respond, before he could see if she was crying. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and stop signs and the crushing weight of loss. When he got back to his apartment, Emma was asleep. Her grandmother was reading on the couch. How was she? Ethan asked, his voice coming out rough. Perfect, as always. How was your evening? Long. She studied him with the knowing look only mothers could manage. Everything all right, sweetheart? Will be, eventually. Woman troubles? Ethan almost laughed. Something like that. Well, whoever she is, she's an idiot if she let you go. He kissed her forehead. Thanks, Mom. I'll see you tomorrow? Of course. After she left, Ethan checked on Emma, pulling her blanket up and kissing her sleeping face. Then he sat in his living room in the dark, staring at nothing, trying to figure out how his life had fallen apart so completely in less than a week. His phone buzzed. For one wild moment, he thought it might be Adriana saying she'd changed her mind. It was Jake. Jake, stay away from my mother. Stay away from me. If I see you at the office before my transfer goes through, I'm filing a complaint. We're done. Ethan stared at the message until the screen went dark. Then he set the phone aside and let himself feel it. All the pain, all the guilt, all the grief for a friendship destroyed and a love he'd found too late. He didn't cry. Couldn't. Just sat there in the quiet darkness of his apartment, wondering if Adriana was right. If love that caused this much damage could really be worth it. The next 2 weeks passed in a fog. Ethan went to work, picked up Emma from school, made dinner, helped with homework, read bedtime stories. All the normal rhythms of his life, but everything felt muted. Like he was watching himself go through the motions from somewhere far away. Jake's desk stayed empty for a week, then someone new moved into it. His transfer had gone through. He was gone. Probably already in Seattle, starting over somewhere Ethan's betrayal couldn't reach him. Ethan hadn't heard from Adriana since that night. He deleted her number from his phone so he wouldn't be tempted to text. It didn't help. He still knew it by heart. Still reached for his phone a dozen times a day to tell her something funny Emma said or ask her opinion on something stupid.
Emma noticed? Of course she did. "Where's your friend?" she asked one night at dinner. "The pretty lady from the museum?" Ethan's throat tightened. "She's busy with work, sweetheart. When can we see her again?" "I don't know. Maybe not for a while." "Oh." Emma pushed her peas around her plate. "I liked her." "Me too, baby. Me too."
At work, Ethan threw himself into projects, took on extra assignments, stayed late. Anything to avoid going home to an empty apartment where every silence reminded him of Adriana's absence. His manager noticed. "You're working too hard. Need to stay busy." Personal stuff still not resolved? Not really resolvable at this point. "I'm sorry." She hesitated. For what it's worth, Jake never said what happened, and I didn't ask. But whatever it was, people make mistakes. Give it time. Time. Everyone kept saying that, like time could heal a wound this deep. 3 weeks after that final conversation with Adriana, Ethan was putting Emma to bed when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Hello?" "Ethan, it's Adriana." His heart stopped. "Hi. Is this a bad time?" "No, Emma's in bed. I can talk." Silence on the line, then, "I've been thinking about what you said, about fighting for things." Ethan sat down slowly. "Yeah?" "Jake still won't talk to me. I've tried everything. Letters, emails, showing up at his apartment before he left. He shut me out completely." Her voice was thick with tears. "And I realized something. I spent his entire childhood choosing my career over him. Now I'm doing the same thing. Choosing his approval over my own happiness." "Adriana, let me finish. Please." She took a shaky breath. "I don't know if we can fix what we broke with Jake. Maybe we can't. Maybe he'll hate us forever. But you were right about one thing. If I walk away from you because I'm scared, because it's easier than fighting, then I'm proving that I haven't changed at all." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I miss you. I'm saying the last 3 weeks have been the worst of my life. I'm saying that I love you, and I was an idiot to let you go." She paused. "If you still want this, want me, after everything." Ethan closed his eyes, relief and fear and hope crashing through him in equal measure. "Of course I still want you. Even though Jake, we'll figure it out. We should have been honest from the start, but we weren't. We can't change that. We can only move forward. How do we move forward when my son won't speak to me? We give him space. We give him time. And we stop hiding." Ethan's voice grew stronger. "No more secrets. No more sneaking around. If we're doing this, we do it right. You want to go public? I want to stop being ashamed of something that makes me happy. Don't you?" Adriana was quiet for a long moment. "Yes. Yes, I do." "Then that's what we do." "Ethan, what if he never forgives us? Then at least we'll have each other. And maybe eventually he'll see that we weren't trying to hurt him, that we just found something real in a complicated situation." "You really believe that?" "I have to, because the alternative is giving up on the best thing that's happened to me in years. And I'm done playing it safe." He heard her breath catch, then a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "When did you get so brave? Somewhere between falling in love with you and losing you. Turns out the second one was worse. I'm sorry for pushing you away, for... Don't apologize. You were protecting your son. I understand that. I'm not choosing you over him. I need you to know that." "I do. You're choosing yourself, finally." Another long silence, then, "Can I see you?" Ethan looked at the clock. 9:30. Emma was asleep. "Where?" "Anywhere. I don't care. I just need to see you." "My place. Give me 30 minutes to get Emma's grandmother over." "I'll be there." Ethan hung up, and for the first time in 3 weeks, he felt like he could breathe. Adriana arrived 40 minutes later, windblown and breathless like she'd run all the way. Ethan opened the door and they just stood there, staring at each other across the threshold. 3 weeks apart, and she looked different somehow, thinner, older, like the weight of everything had carved itself into her face. "Hi," she said. "Hi."
and then she was in his arms, and Ethan was holding her so tight he could feel her heartbeat against his chest. She smelled like rain and that perfume he'd memorized months ago, and when she started crying, he just held on tighter. "I'm so sorry," she whispered into his shoulder. "I'm so sorry I pushed you away." "You don't have to apologize." "Yes, I do. You were right about everything. I was hiding, using Jake as an excuse because I was terrified."
Ethan pulled back just enough to see her face. Of what?
Of this being real. Of letting you all the way in, and then losing you anyway. She wiped at her eyes, frustrated with the tears. "Everyone I've ever loved has left. My parents died when Jake was 6. My husband cheated and walked out. Jake's pulling away from me and has been for years. I was just too blind to see it. And then you showed up, and for the first time in forever, I felt like maybe I could be more than just successful. Maybe I could be happy." "You can be."
Can I? Because it feels like every time I reach for happiness, it destroys something else. Ethan led her to the couch, kept her hand in his. "You know what I realized while you were gone? Playing it safe doesn't protect you from loss. It just guarantees you'll lose by never trying." He brushed her hair back from her face. "My ex-wife left because being a parent was too hard. I could have let that destroy me. Could have decided that loving anyone was too risky. Instead, I have Emma, and yeah, I'm exhausted and broke and terrified most days. But she's the best thing in my life. That's different."
Is it?
You think loving Jake hasn't cost you? You missed years of his childhood building companies. That hurt you both. But you still love him, still trying to fix it. And failing spectacularly. Maybe you're just learning that some relationships take work. Take time. He squeezed her hand. I'm willing to put in that work. The question is whether you are. Adriana looked at him with those dark eyes that had first caught him across a crowded room. What if Jake never comes around? Then we deal with that together, but we stop making decisions based on fear. I don't know how to do that. Fear's been my operating system for 30 years. Then we figure it out as we go. Ethan pulled her closer. I love you, Adriana. Not the perfect version you think you need to be. You, messy and scared and trying your best. That's who I want. She kissed him then, desperate and sweet, and Ethan felt something settle in his chest. This wasn't fixed. Jake was still out there, still hurting, still refusing contact. The damage was real and deep and maybe permanent, but sitting here with Adriana in his arms, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. They spent that night talking through what came next. No more hiding, no more pretending. They'd tell people, friends, colleagues, anyone who asked. They'd deal with the judgment and the questions and the inevitable gossip, and they'd wait for Jake to be ready to listen. What about Emma? Adriana asked, curled against Ethan's side on the couch. We need to tell her something. I know, she's been asking about you. She has? Apparently you made an impression. Ethan smiled. She told me last week that she wished you were her mom. Adriana's breath caught. Ethan, I'm not asking you to be, but if we're doing this for real, she needs to know you're in my life, in our lives. What do we tell her about Jake? The truth, that it's complicated, that we made mistakes and we're trying to fix them. He paused. Kids understand more than we give them credit for. She knows I've been sad. She deserves to know why. When? Tomorrow. If you're ready. Adriana was quiet for a long moment, then, I'm terrified. Of Emma? Of screwing this up too. I already failed one kid. What if You didn't fail Jake. You made mistakes. There's a difference. Feels the same from where I'm sitting. Then sit somewhere else. Ethan shifted so he could look at her properly. You want to know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who built an empire from nothing, who survived losing her parents in a marriage and still showed up every day, who's brave enough to admit when she's wrong and strong enough to try again. That's not failure, Adriana. That's resilience. Her eyes were wet again. How do you do that? Do what? Make me believe I'm better than I am. I'm not making you believe anything. I'm just showing you what's already there. She kissed him softly. I love you. I love you too. They stayed like that until the early hours of morning, talking and planning and slowly rebuilding what had broken. When Adriana finally left, she had an 8 o'clock board meeting. Ethan felt lighter than he had in weeks. The next evening, he sat Emma down after dinner. "Sweetheart, we need to talk about something." Emma looked up from her coloring, immediately wary. "Am I in trouble?" "No, baby, nothing like that." Ethan took a breath. "Remember Adriana, my friend from the museum? The pretty lady?" "Yeah, her." He chose his words carefully. "She's not just my friend, we're dating, like how some of your friends' parents date." Emma's eyes went wide. "Like boyfriend and girlfriend?" "Sort of, but for adults." "Does that mean she's going to be my mom?" "No, you have a mom even if she's not here. Adriana would just be—" Ethan struggled. "Someone who cares about both of us. Someone I care about a lot." Emma was quiet, processing. Then, "Does she like dinosaurs?" Despite everything, Ethan laughed. "I don't know. We can ask her." "Is she nice?" "Very nice." "Then okay." Emma went back to her coloring like they'd just discussed what to have for breakfast. "Can she come to my school play?" "If she's free, I'm sure she'd love to." "Good." "Brittany's mom is bringing her boyfriend, and I wanted to bring someone too." It was such a kid thing to say that Ethan felt his throat tighten. He pulled Emma into a hug, breathing in her strawberry shampoo. "I love you. You know that?" "I know, Daddy. Love you too." It was easier than he'd expected. Maybe because Emma was 5 and her world was still simple. Maybe because she just wanted her father to be happy. Either way, Ethan felt one less weight on his shoulders. Telling everyone else was harder. At work, people noticed immediately that something had changed. Ethan was lighter, less withdrawn. When someone asked if he'd had a good weekend, he said yes and meant it. The office gossip mill churned to life. His manager cornered him on Wednesday. "You seem better." "I am." "Does this have anything to do with Jake's transfer?" Ethan hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Indirectly." "Care to elaborate?" "Not really, but I appreciate you asking." She studied him. "You know people are talking." "Let them talk." "Fair enough." She turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You seem more like yourself than I've seen in months." That weekend, Adriana came to Ethan's apartment for dinner. Emma was shy at first, hiding behind Ethan's leg when Adriana arrived. But within 20 minutes, they were on the floor together. Emma explaining the complex social hierarchy of kindergarten dinosaurs, while Adriana listened with genuine interest. "So T-Rex is the queen," Adriana said seriously, holding up the plastic toy. "And these little ones are her subjects?" "Exactly. But the Triceratops wants to be queen too, so they fight. Sounds complicated." "It is. Being a dinosaur is hard." Adriana met Ethan's eyes over Emma's head, something soft in her expression. Later, after Emma was in bed, they sat on the couch with wine and takeout containers. "She's amazing," Adriana said quietly. "She likes you." "The feeling's mutual." She picked at her noodles. "I keep thinking about Jake at that age, how I miss so much of it." "You can't change the past." "I know, but I can maybe do better going forward." She set down her food. "I wrote him another letter, sent it yesterday." "What did you say?" "That I was sorry, that I understood why he was angry, that I wasn't asking him to forgive me, just to eventually let me explain." She swallowed hard. "And that I was with you. Officially. That we weren't hiding anymore." Ethan's chest tightened. "How do you think he'll react?" "Honestly, I think he'll be furious, but at least he'll know the truth. That's brave. Or stupid. Hard to tell the difference sometimes." They fell into comfortable silence, the kind that only came from really knowing someone. Ethan thought about how much had changed in 6 months, how a casual networking event had upended his entire life, how falling in love with the wrong person had somehow led him here, to this moment, this woman, this feeling of rightness that he'd been missing for years. "What are you thinking?" Adriana asked. "That I'd do it all again, even knowing how much it would hurt." "Even Jake?" "Even Jake. Because the alternative was spending the rest of my life safe and miserable. And I'm done with that." She kissed him, and it tasted like hope and healing and the promise of something better. The next month passed in a blur of building something real. Adriana started coming to Emma's soccer games. Emma started asking when Adriana was coming over.
They had dinner together twice a week, slowly weaving their lives together in the small, ordinary ways that mattered. People talked. Of course they did. Some of Ethan's coworkers gave him strange looks. One asked point blank if he was dating Jake's mother. When Ethan said yes, the guy just shook his head and walked away. Adriana faced worse. Her business circles were smaller, more insular. Word got around fast. One investor pulled out of a deal citing concerns about judgment. Another made a snide comment at a board meeting about mixing business with pleasure. "I don't care," she told Ethan one night, her voice fierce. "They can think what they want. I'm done living my life for other people's approval." "Are you sure?" "Yes. For the first time in my life, I'm sure about something that isn't work." She took his hand. "I'm sure about you." But Jake remained silent. The letter went unanswered. Adriana's calls went straight to voicemail. She tried texting, just simple things, nothing heavy. "Hope you're settling in okay. Seattle's supposed to be beautiful this time of year. Nothing. Maybe I should fly out there," she said one evening, pacing Ethan's living room while Emma slept. "Force him to talk to me." "That won't help. He asked for space." "It's been 2 months, and maybe he needs 2 more, or 6, or a year." "I can't wait a year." "You might have to." Ethan caught her hand, stilling her pacing. "I know it's killing you, but pushing him will only make it worse." "So I just do nothing? Let him hate me?" "You let him process, let him be angry, and when he's ready, if he's ever ready, you're here." Adriana sank onto the couch, defeated. "What if he's never ready? Then we deal with that together." "You keep saying that, together, like it's simple." "It is simple. Doesn't mean it's easy." She looked at him with exhausted eyes. "I'm so tired of this hurting." "I know." Ethan pulled her close. "But it's worth it. You're worth it." "Am I?" Sometimes I wonder if Jake's right. If I'm just selfish, putting what I want ahead of what's right. What's right? Spending the rest of your life alone and miserable to punish yourself for mistakes you already made? He tilted her chin up. "That doesn't help anyone. Not you, not Jake, not me. All it does is waste the time you have left." "When did you get so wise?" "Somewhere between falling apart and putting myself back together." They held each other in the quiet, and outside the city hummed with evening traffic and distant sirens and all the noise of lives being lived. Somewhere in Seattle, Jake was building a new life, trying to outrun the betrayal. And here in this small apartment, Ethan and Adriana were building something too, fragile and imperfect, held together by hope and stubbornness and the kind of love that refused to quit. 3 months after the confrontation, Ethan got an email. It was late Thursday night. Emma was asleep. Adriana had left an hour ago after dinner. Ethan was scrolling through work messages, half asleep, when he saw the name, Jake Martinez. His heart stopped. He stared at the subject line. "We need to talk," for a full minute before opening it. "Ethan, I've spent 3 months trying to figure out what to say to you. Tried writing this email a dozen times and deleted it every time because I was too angry, too hurt. But my therapist, I'm seeing a therapist now, says I need to actually deal with this instead of just running from it. So here it is. What you did was fucked up. You were my friend. I trusted you. Brought you into my life, my mom's life, and you repaid that by lying to my face for months. Every time we had lunch, every time you looked me in the eye and asked how I was doing, you were sleeping with my mother and didn't say a word. That betrayal? It's going to take me a long time to get over. Maybe I never will. But here's the thing I realized while I've been out here, putting 2,000 miles between us. I'm angrier at my mom than I am at you. Because you didn't owe me anything. Not really. We were work friends. That's it. But she's my mother. She's supposed to put me first. And she chose you instead. Except that's not really true either, is it? Because she didn't choose you over me. She chose herself. Chose to be happy instead of living up to some impossible standard of what a good mother looks like. And I'm realizing that maybe I've been holding that impossible standard over her head for years. Punishing her for mistakes she made when I was a kid. Never letting her move past them. I'm not ready to forgive either of you. I don't know if I'll ever be ready. But I'm also not ready to cut you out of my life forever. So I'm asking for time. Real time. Not weeks or months, but however long it takes for me to work through this. Don't respond to this email. I'm not ready to talk yet. I just needed you to know that I'm trying. Jake Ethan read it 3 times, his hand shaking.
Then he forwarded it to Adriana with a single line. He's trying. It's a start. Her response came within minutes. Adriana, I'm crying. Ethan, me too. Adriana, is it wrong that I have hope now? Ethan, no, I think hope's the whole point. The next morning, Adriana showed up at Ethan's apartment at 6 with coffee and tears on her face. I got one too, she said, handing him her phone. Jake's email to her was longer, more raw. He talked about feeling abandoned as a kid, about watching her choose boardrooms over his basketball games, about the slow accumulation of resentment he'd carried for years. But he also talked about his therapist helping him see patterns, how he pushed people away before they could hurt him, how he'd been doing it to his mother for over a decade. I don't know how to stop being angry at you, he'd written, but I'm willing to try. Just give me time. Adriana was shaking, the phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline. He's willing to try. Yeah, that's more than I thought I'd get. It's more than we deserve. She looked at him sharply. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. We lied to him, hurt him. He'd be justified in never speaking to either of us again. But he's trying anyway. Yeah, he is. Ethan pulled her into his arms, which means we need to be worth it. When he's ready to talk, we need to be better than who we were. How do we do that? We keep being honest, keep showing up, keep proving that this, us, isn't just some selfish thing we did without thinking. Adriana pressed her face against his shoulder. I'm scared. Of what? That when he finally does talk to us, he'll realize we're not worth the effort. Then we prove him wrong. They stood like that in Ethan's kitchen while morning light filtered through the windows, and Emma called from her room that she was awake. Normal life resuming around this moment of fragile hope. The weeks that followed were strange. Knowing Jake was out there, working through things, trying, it changed something, made the guilt less suffocating. Ethan and Adriana stopped walking around like they were waiting for punishment and started actually living. Emma's school play came and went. Adriana sat in the front row beside Ethan, clapping louder than anyone when Emma came on stage as tree number 3. Afterward, Emma introduced Adriana to all her friends as my dad's girlfriend, and if any of the other parents had opinions, they kept them to themselves. At work, Ethan stopped avoiding conversations about his personal life. When people asked if he was seeing anyone, he said yes. When they pressed for details, he said she was great and left it at that. The gossip eventually died down, replaced by newer, juicier scandals. Adriana's business recovered from the initial shock. The investor who pulled out was replaced by 2 others who didn't care who she dated. The board member who made snide comments retired. Life moved on, and slowly, carefully, Ethan and Adriana built something that felt like a future. I want you to move in with me, Adriana said one night, out of nowhere. They were at her house, Emma asleep in the guest room that had slowly transformed into Emma's room, filled with toys and books and the evidence of a child's presence. Ethan looked up from his laptop. What? Move in. You and Emma. Make this official. Adriana, I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring things out. But this house has never felt like a home until you started spending time here. And I want... She stopped, frustrated with herself. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want Emma's dinosaurs permanently on my coffee table. I want to stop splitting our lives between 2 places and just be together. Ethan's heart was racing. That's a big step. I know. Emma would have to change schools. We'd find a good one nearby. Better than the one she's in now, probably. And Jake? What if he comes back? Sees we're living together? Then he sees we're serious. That this wasn't just some... She waved her hand. Some midlife crisis or whatever he thinks it is. Is that what this is? You proving a point to your son? No. Adriana moved closer, her expression fierce. This is me choosing happiness. Choosing you and Emma and a life that feels real instead of just successful. I'm done apologizing for that. Ethan studied her face, saw the vulnerability beneath the confidence. What about your perfect house? Emma's going to destroy it. Good. It needs destroying. It's too sterile anyway. I can't afford half the mortgage on this place. I don't care about money. Adriana, stop finding reasons to say no and just tell me what you actually feel. What did he feel? Terrified, excited, like he was standing on the edge of something huge and inevitable. His whole life he'd played it safe, built walls, avoided risk, and it had left him hollow. "Yes," he said. Adriana blinked. "Yes?" "Yes, we'll move in, me and Emma, but on one condition." "What?" "We tell Jake first, before we do anything official. He deserves to know from us, not find out from someone else." She nodded slowly. "You're right. We call him this weekend." "What if he doesn't answer?" "Then we leave a message. But we try." That Saturday, they sat side by side on Adriana's couch, Ethan's phone on speaker between them. He'd texted Jake earlier. "Need to talk. Important. Can you call?" To his surprise, Jake had responded, "6 your time work?" Now it was 6:05 and the phone was ringing. Jake answered on the third ring. "Hey." His voice sounded tired, older. Ethan's throat tightened. "Hey, thanks for calling back." "Yeah, what's going on?" Ethan looked at Adriana. She nodded, reached for his hand. "We wanted to tell you something before you heard it from anyone else," Ethan said. "Your mom and I, we're together, officially, and I'm moving in with her, me and Emma." Silence on the line. It stretched so long Ethan thought Jake had hung up. "You still there?" he asked finally. "Yeah, I'm here." Jake's voice was flat, impossible to read. "Moving in. That's serious." "It is." "How long have you been back together?" 4 months. Another long pause. "Does Emma know about Mom?" "Yeah, they get along really well, actually." "Of course they do." There was something bitter in Jake's tone. "Mom's great with other people's kids." Adriana flinched. Ethan squeezed her hand. "Jake," he started. I'm not trying to be an asshole," Jake said quickly. This is a lot." "I know." "You're really doing this, playing house with my mother?" "We're building a life together, yeah." "What if it doesn't work out? What happens to Emma then?" It was a fair question, one Ethan had asked himself 100 times. "Then we deal with it like adults, make sure she's okay. But I'm not planning on it not working out." "People never plan for things to fall apart. They just do." "Sometimes," Adriana said quietly, speaking for the first time. "But sometimes they don't. Sometimes people work hard and communicate and actually make it." "Like you and Dad did?" The words were sharp, pointed. "No, not like your father and me. We gave up too easily, hurt each other instead of fixing things." Her voice shook slightly. "I don't want to make those mistakes again." "So I'm supposed to what? Be happy for you?" "No," she said. "You're supposed to feel however you feel. Be angry if you need to be angry. But eventually, when you're ready, I hope you can see that this isn't about hurting you. It's about me finally figuring out what I actually want." Jake was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. "I don't know how to do this. How to watch my mom date my friend. It's weird and it makes me feel things I don't know how to process." "That's fair," Ethan said. "But I'm trying. That's the best I can give you right now." "That's enough." "Is it? Because it doesn't feel like enough." "It is," Adriana said firmly. "Jake, you showing up for this call, listening instead of hanging up, that's more than I expected. More than I probably deserve." "You're my mom. Of course I showed up." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Despite everything, the anger, the betrayal, the months of silence, Jake was still here, still trying. "Thank you," Adriana whispered. "Yeah. Well," Jake cleared his throat. "I should go. Got plans with some friends." "Jake?" Ethan said quickly before he could hang up. "Yeah? Take care of yourself out there." A pause, then softer. "You too, man." The line went dead. Ethan and Adriana sat in silence, both processing what had just happened. "He called me Mom," Adriana said finally, her voice breaking. "At the end, he called me Mom." I heard. "He hasn't called me that in years. Usually it's Mother or just Adriana." She turned to Ethan, tears streaming down her face. "That means something, right? That he's softening?" "Yeah, I think it does." She collapsed against him, sobbing with relief and hope, and the weight of months of fear finally lifting. Ethan held her and thought about how far they'd come. From a charged moment on a balcony to this, sitting in her living room, planning a future, earning back the trust they'd broken. It wasn't fixed. Jake was still in Seattle, still processing. There would be more hard conversations, more moments of doubt. But for the first time since everything fell apart, Ethan believed they might actually make it through. Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Why's Adriana crying?" "Happy tears, sweetheart," Ethan said. "Oh, okay." She climbed onto the couch between them. "Can we have pancakes tomorrow?" Adriana laughed through her tears, pulling Emma close. "Yeah, baby, we can have pancakes." And sitting there, Ethan and Adriana and Emma tangled together on the couch felt like the beginning of something real. Messy and complicated and built on the wreckage of mistakes, but real. Worth fighting for. Worth everything. The moving truck arrived on a Saturday morning in late September, and Emma treated it like Christmas. She ran from room to room in their old apartment, pointing out which boxes held which dinosaurs, making sure the movers understood that the green T-Rex was extremely important and needed special handling. "She's excited," Adriana said, watching from the doorway with a soft smile. "She's been talking about having her own room at your place for weeks," Ethan replied, taping up the last box. "Keep asking if she can paint it purple." "Purple it is, then." "You sure? It's going to clash with everything." "I don't care. Let her pick her colors. Let her make it messy." Adriana moved into the room, running her hand along the bare wall. "This place has been a museum long enough. Time for it to actually feel lived in." Ethan straightened, studying her. She looked different these days, lighter somehow, like she'd finally stopped carrying the weight of other people's expectations. Her hair was down, she was wearing jeans and an old sweater, and she was more beautiful than she'd been in that black dress at the networking event a year ago. "What?" she asked, catching his stare. "Nothing. Just thinking about how much has changed." "Having second thoughts?" "Not even a little bit." She crossed to him, slid her arms around his waist. "Good. Because I already told the movers where everything goes and I'm not redoing it." "Controlling as always?" "You love it." "I really do." They moved everything that day. Ethan's worn furniture that Adriana immediately started planning to replace, Emma's overflowing toy collection, the small, ordinary pieces of a life being transplanted into something bigger. By evening, boxes filled every room of Adriana's house, and Emma was sprawled on the living room floor drawing purple dinosaurs on the walls of her future bedroom. "She knows those are just plans, right?" Adriana whispered. "Not the actual walls?" "Let her dream," Ethan said, pulling her onto the couch beside him. "We'll paint over whatever she draws tomorrow. Or we could frame it, make it part of the room." "You're going soft." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally figuring out what actually matters." That night, after Emma was asleep in her new purple room, Adriana had ordered rush delivery on paint, and they'd spent 3 hours covering the walls while Emma supervised. Ethan and Adriana collapsed into bed, exhausted and paint splattered. "This is really happening," Adriana said, staring at the ceiling. "You're really here, Eek. Where else would I be?" "I don't know. Sometimes I still can't believe you chose this. Chose me. After everything." Ethan rolled onto his side to face her. "You know what I realized? The safest choice isn't always the right one. I spent 3 years after Emma's mom left playing it safe, avoiding risk, and I was miserable. You had Emma. I had Emma, and she's everything. But I was still just surviving, not actually living." He brushed hair from her face. "You made me want to live again, even though it cost you Jake?" The question hung between them. It had been 6 months since that phone call, and while Jake had responded to a few texts, short, careful messages that suggested he was slowly working through things, he still hadn't come home, hadn't agreed to meet in person. The distance remained. "I hate that he's hurting," Ethan said carefully. "Hate that we caused that hurt. But I don't regret loving you. Can't regret it. Even if he never forgives us? Even then. Because the alternative was spending my life wondering what if, and I'm done with what ifs." Adriana kissed him, slow and deep, and Ethan felt the now familiar rush of gratitude for this woman, this moment, this complicated, messy life they were building together. The first few months of living together were an adjustment. Emma had nightmares and would crawl into bed between them at 2 in the morning, all elbows and knees. Adriana's work schedule was chaos. Early morning calls with investors in different time zones, late nights fixing server crashes. Ethan tried to balance it all,
making sure Emma got to school on time, that dinner happened, that the house didn't completely fall apart. They fought about stupid things. Whether to get a dog, how to load the dishwasher, why Adriana's mother called at 7 in the morning on Sundays. But they also learned each other's rhythms, learned that Adriana needed silence in the mornings to think, that Ethan got anxious when he didn't have a plan, that Emma required exactly 3 bedtime stories or she wouldn't sleep. It was hard and ordinary and nothing like the fantasy Ethan had imagined when they first started sneaking around. It was better. Christmas came and went. Emma made Adriana a card that said, "Thank you for being nice to my dad," with a drawing of all 3 of them holding hands. Adriana cried. Ethan took a picture and sent it to Jake with a simple message. "Merry Christmas. Hope you're doing well." Jake didn't respond for 3 days. When he did, it was brief. "Merry Christmas to you too." It wasn't much, but it was something. In February, Emma's school had a mother-daughter breakfast. Emma came home with the flyer and looked between Ethan and Adriana nervously. "I know you're not my real mom," she said to Adriana, "but can you come anyway?" Adriana's eyes filled with tears. "I would love to come." "Really? Really?" The morning of the breakfast, Ethan watched them leave together. Emma in her carefully chosen dress, Adriana holding her hand, and felt his chest tighten with something he couldn't name. When they came back 2 hours later, Emma was bouncing with excitement. "Everyone loved Adriana," she announced. "Mrs. Peterson said she's really pretty, and Brittany's mom asked if she does yoga because she looks young." "What did you say?" Ethan asked, amused. "I said she works a lot and sometimes forgets to eat lunch, so that's probably why." Adriana laughed so hard she had to sit down. Later, when Emma was occupied with her homework, she pulled Ethan into the kitchen. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice serious. Ethan's stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. She took a breath. "I love that little girl. I know she's not mine. I know I have no right to feel this way after only knowing her for less than a year. But I love her, Ethan, and it terrifies me." "Why does it terrify you?" "Because what if I screw it up? What if I repeat all the mistakes I made with Jake?" "You won't." "You don't know that." "I do." "Because you're showing up. You went to that breakfast even though it probably brought up all kinds of painful memories about missing Jake's stuff. You painted her room purple even though it clashes with your entire aesthetic. You're trying, Adriana. That's what matters." She pressed her face against his shoulder. "I want to be good at this." "You already are." "I want to be better." "Then we'll work on it together, like everything else." In March, Jake called out of nowhere on a Tuesday night. Ethan was helping Emma with her math homework when his phone rang. "Hey," Jake said when Ethan answered. "Is this a bad time?" "No, just homework. What's up?" "I'm coming home for a week. End of April. Vacation time I need to use." He paused. "I was thinking maybe we could meet up. Talk." Ethan's heart started racing. Yeah, I'd like that. Just you, I'm not ready to see Mom yet." "Okay." "I know that's probably weird, but I need to do this in steps." "I get it. Whatever you need." "Cool. I'll text you when I know exact dates." "Jake?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for being willing to try." Another pause. "Yeah. Well, my therapist says holding on to anger just hurts me. So, trying to let some of it go." After they hung up, Ethan told Adriana she tried to hide her disappointment that Jake didn't want to see her yet, but he could see it in the way her shoulders sagged. "He's coming home," she said quietly. "That's something. He'll see you when he's ready. And if he's never ready, then we deal with that. But I think he will be, eventually. You're more optimistic than I am. One of us has to be." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That night, Ethan held her while she cried quietly, grieving the relationship with her son that was still broken, still healing, still uncertain. Jake arrived in late April. They met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory, far from anywhere that held memories. Jake looked good, healthier than the last time Ethan had seen him. He'd grown a beard, cut his hair shorter. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Hey," Ethan said, standing awkwardly. "Hey." They shook hands, which felt ridiculously formal, then sat down with their coffee between them like a barrier. "So, Jake said finally. You're living with my mom. Yeah. How's that going? Good. Really good, actually. Jake nodded, processing. And Emma? How's she handling it? She loves Adriana. It works. Better than I expected. That's good. Yeah, good. Jake took a sip of his coffee. I've been working through a lot in therapy, trying to understand why this hit me so hard. Jake, you don't have to. No, I want to. I need to say this. He set down his cup. I spent most of my childhood feeling like I wasn't enough to make my mom stay. She chose work over me, over and over. And I told myself it was fine, that I understood that success was important, but really I was just hurt. Ethan stayed quiet, letting him talk. Then you came along, this guy I liked, who I brought into my life. And she chose you, not over me exactly, but he struggled for words. It felt like proof, like confirmation that I'd never been enough. That's not true. I know. Logically, I know. My therapist has beaten that into my head for months, but knowing it and feeling it are different things. Jake looked up, his eyes red. I'm trying to separate the old hurt from the new hurt, trying to see you and my mom as just two people who fell for each other, not as this intentional betrayal designed to hurt me. We never wanted to hurt you. I know, and that's what makes it hard to stay angry, because I can see you're good together. My mom's, she's different now, lighter. I can see it even from Seattle, just from the way she texts, and that's because of you. She was always capable of that, she just needed a reason. Maybe, Jake smiled slightly. Emma sounds like a good kid. She is. She asks about you sometimes. Adriana must have mentioned you. What does she say? That you're Adriana's son and you're figuring some things out. She accepts it pretty easily. Kids are better at that than adults. They talked for another hour, carefully navigating around the painful parts, focusing on the safe topics. Work. Seattle. Emma's dinosaur obsession. It wasn't the friendship they'd had before, but it was something. A foundation they could maybe build on. As they were leaving, Jake stopped. I'm going to see my mom before I go back. Not ready yet, but soon. Maybe tomorrow. She'll be happy to hear that. Yeah, well, tell her I'll call tonight to set something up. I will. They shook hands again, and this time it felt less formal, more like the beginning of something. That night, when Ethan told Adriana she couldn't speak for a full minute, just sat there with tears streaming down her face while Emma patted her arm sympathetically. Why are you crying? Emma asked. Because sometimes things that hurt for a long time finally start to feel better, Adriana managed. And that's a good thing. Oh, okay. Emma considered this. Can we have ice cream to celebrate? Adriana laughed through her tears. Yes, baby, we can definitely have ice cream. Jake came over 2 days later. Adriana spent the morning pacing, changing her outfit 3 times, asking Ethan if she should make coffee or if that was too presumptuous. He's your son, Ethan said gently. Just be yourself. What if myself isn't good enough? It will be. When Jake arrived, Emma was at school, and Ethan made himself scarce, going to the grocery store to give them privacy. He came back an hour later to find them sitting in the living room, both red-eyed but smiling. Hey, Jake said when Ethan walked in. Hey, how's it going? Good. We're talking. He looked at his mother. Really talking, for maybe the first time in years. Adriana reached for Jake's hand. He's staying for dinner. Yeah? Yeah, if that's okay. Of course it's okay. That evening, they sat around the table together. Ethan, Adriana, Emma, and Jake. It was awkward at first. Emma kept staring at Jake like he was a celebrity, and Jake seemed unsure how to interact with a 5-year-old. But gradually, the conversation flowed. Emma told Jake about her dinosaurs. Jake told Emma about Seattle. Adriana and Ethan mostly listened, both aware that this moment was fragile and precious. After dinner, while Adriana was putting Emma to bed, Jake and Ethan cleaned up the kitchen. She's good with Emma, Jake said, watching through the doorway as Adriana read a bedtime story. She is. I always wondered if she'd have been different if she'd had another kid, someone to start over with. He rinsed a plate, his movements slow. But I think it's more than that. I think she's different because she's finally letting herself be happy.
She's trying.
We all are. Jake turned to face him. Look, I'm not going to lie and say everything's fine. There's still a lot I'm working through, but I can see you love each other, and I can see you're good for her, for each other. That means a lot. I'm still angry sometimes, still hurt, but I'm also tired of carrying it around, so I'm choosing to try, to forgive, even if it takes a while. That's all we can ask for.
Jake nodded. I'm heading back to Seattle on Sunday, but I'll come back, more often, start rebuilding this. We'd like that. They finished the dishes in comfortable silence, and when Adriana came back down, she looked at both of them with something close to wonder. My two favorite people in the same room, she said softly. I never thought I'd see that again. Get used to it, Jake said, but he was smiling. I'm going to be around more. Over the next few months, Jake did come around more. At first it was just visits, a weekend here, a few days there. Then he started calling regularly. Video chats with Emma, where he'd tell her stories about Seattle and she'd show him her latest drawings. Conversations with Adriana that went past surface level, diving into the hard topics they'd avoided for years. The healing wasn't linear. There were still moments of tension, old hurts bubbling up, but they worked through them, together. In August, a year after Ethan and Emma had moved in, Adriana came home from work with a strange expression. What's wrong? Ethan asked immediately. Nothing's wrong, She set down her bag. I got an offer today, to sell Veilcore. Ethan's stomach dropped. What? A tech giant wants to acquire us. The offer is, it's more money than I ever imagined. Enough to retire tomorrow if I wanted. What did you say? I said I needed to think about it. She sat down heavily. I built that company from nothing. It's been my entire identity for 15 years, and now someone's offering to take it all away. Do you want to sell? I don't know. Part of me wants to hold on, keep building, but another part, she looked at him. Another part is tired, wants to slow down, spend more time with you and Emma, maybe travel, maybe just exist without constantly hustling. What does your gut say? My gut says I've already proven whatever I needed to prove, that success isn't worth sacrificing the people I love. She reached for his hand. What do you think? I think you should do whatever makes you happy, even if it means change, especially if it means change. She thought about it for a week, talking it through with Ethan, with Jake, even with Emma in simplified terms. In the end, she accepted the offer, sold Veilcore for an amount that made Ethan's head spin. What are you going to do now? He asked the day the papers were signed. I have no idea, she admitted, and it's terrifying and exciting at the same time. Welcome to the rest of us mortals, she laughed. What should we do first? Whatever we want. They spent the next year doing exactly that. Adriana took Emma to museums and parks, made it to every soccer game, learned to braid hair through YouTube tutorials that made Emma giggle. She was terrible at it, but she tried. That was what mattered. She and Ethan traveled when Emma was at summer camp, Italy, Greece, Iceland, places they'd both always wanted to see but never had time for. They hiked and ate good food and made love in hotel rooms with ocean views and talked about everything and nothing. Jake moved back from Seattle, got a job locally, started coming to family dinners every Sunday. He and Ethan rebuilt their friendship slowly, carefully, like constructing something delicate from broken pieces. It would never be what it was before, but it was something new, something honest. On a Saturday morning in October, exactly 2 years after that first networking event, Ethan woke up to find Adriana already awake, watching him. That's creepy, he mumbled. I'm being romantic. Still creepy. She smiled. I was just thinking about everything that's happened, how different my life is now. Better or worse? Better. So much better. She traced her finger along his jaw. I used to think success meant building empires and impressing boards, but this, waking up next to you, knowing Emma's down the hall, that Jake's coming for dinner tonight, this is what success actually feels like. Took you long enough to figure it out. Some of us are slow learners. Good thing I'm patient. She kissed him, and Ethan thought about how far they'd come. From a charged conversation on a balcony to this, messy and real and built on the wreckage of mistakes they'd made and owned. They'd hurt people, broken trust, lost things that mattered, but they'd also found something rare, something worth fighting for. Emma burst into the room, as she did most Saturday mornings, climbing between them with all the grace of a small elephant. "Pancakes?" she demanded.
"Good morning to you, too," Adriana said, laughing. "Good morning. Now pancakes?" "Your daughter has her priorities straight," Ethan said. "She's your daughter when she's demanding." "Pretty sure she's ours at this point." The word hung in the air. Ours. Emma didn't seem to notice, already chattering about what kind of pancakes she wanted. But Adriana's eyes met Ethan's over Emma's head, and something passed between them. An understanding, an acknowledgement of what they'd become.
Later that afternoon, after pancakes and a trip to the park, they were back home when Jake showed up early for dinner. "Hey," he said, looking nervous. "Can we talk? All three of us?" They settled in the living room while Emma played in her room. Jake sat across from Ethan and Adriana, his hands clasped between his knees. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," he started. "About what happened, about how angry I was, about where we are now." "Jake," Adriana began. "Let me finish, please." He took a breath. "When you guys first told me, I thought it was the worst betrayal possible. Thought you'd chosen each other over me. But I've realized that's not what happened. You chose to be happy. And yeah, the way you did it, the lying, the sneaking around, that hurt. But the actual relationship, the love you found?" He looked at his mother. "That's not a betrayal. That's just life being messy and complicated." Adriana's eyes were wet. "Jake, I'm not saying it's been easy to accept, but watching you two together, seeing how you are with Emma, how you've built this family. I can't be angry about that. Won't be angry about it anymore." He smiled, a little watery. "You're happy, Mom. Actually, genuinely happy. And that's what I should have wanted all along." "You're allowed to have been hurt," Adriana said. "I know, and I was. But I'm choosing to move past it, to see what we have now instead of what we lost." He looked at Ethan. "You're good for her, for both of them. And I'm glad she has you." Ethan's throat was tight. "That means everything." "Yeah, well," Jake stood up. "I should probably help Emma with whatever chaos she's creating before dinner." He left them alone. Adriana immediately fell into Ethan's arms, sobbing. "We made it," she whispered. "We actually made it through." "We did. I thought we'd lose him forever." "But we didn't. He came back. They usually do if you give them time." She pulled back to look at him. "How are you always so calm about everything?" "I'm not calm. I've just learned that panicking doesn't help, and that sometimes the only way through is forward." That night they had dinner together, all four of them, plus Emma's endless commentary about kindergarten politics. Jake told stories about his new job. Adriana announced she was thinking about volunteering with a program that helped women start tech companies. Emma declared she was going to be a paleontologist when she grew up, and everyone had to promise to visit her dig sites. It was normal, beautifully, wonderfully normal. After dinner, after Jake had left and Emma was in bed, Ethan and Adriana sat on the back porch with wine, watching the stars come out. "I never thought I could have this," Adriana said quietly. "A family that actually works. People who see all my flaws and love me anyway. You deserve it." "Do I? After all the mistakes I've made?" "We all make mistakes. The difference is you learned from yours, changed, became someone better. Only because you showed me how." "No, you did that yourself. I just gave you a reason." She rested her head on his shoulder. "What happens now?" "What do you mean?" "I don't know. I spent so long building towards something, companies, success, redemption with Jake. Now that I have it all, I don't know what comes next. Maybe nothing has to come next. Maybe we just live." "That's it? Just live?" "Just live. Wake up every morning grateful for what we have. Watch Emma grow up. Be there for Jake when he needs us. Build a life that's not about achieving anything, just about being happy." That sounds too simple. Good things usually are. They sat in comfortable silence, and Ethan thought about the question he'd been carrying for months. He'd bought the ring 3 weeks ago, hidden it in his sock drawer like a teenager, kept waiting for the perfect moment. "Adriana?" "Marry me." She went very still. "What?" "Marry me. Make this official. Let's stop calling it living together and just commit to the rest of our lives." She pulled back to look at him, her eyes wide. "Are you serious?
I don't have the ring on me. It's upstairs in my sock drawer because I was waiting for some perfect romantic moment. But sitting here right now feels perfect enough. He took her hand. I love you. I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life. I want Emma to have your last name if she wants it. I want to stop being afraid that this is temporary and just accept that it's forever. Ethan, you don't have to answer now. Think about it, but I needed you to know. Yes. He blinked. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. I don't need to think about it. She was crying and laughing at the same time. I spent 3 years playing it safe after my divorce, telling myself I was better off alone. Then you walked into that networking event and ruined everything. Sorry about that. Don't be. Best thing that ever happened to me. He kissed her, tasting salt from her tears, and felt something settle deep in his chest. This was it. This was what he'd been searching for without knowing it. Not perfection, not ease, but something real and hard-won and worth every difficult moment it took to get here. They told Emma the next morning. She was thrilled mostly because it meant she got to be a flower girl, which she'd seen in movies and desperately wanted to try. Do I get to throw flowers? She asked seriously. As many as you want, Adriana promised. And wear a fancy dress? The fanciest. Okay, then I think you should get married. Jake's reaction was more emotional. He hugged his mother tight and told Ethan that if he ever hurt her, there would be consequences. But he was smiling when he said it. When's the wedding? He asked. We haven't planned that far, Adriana admitted. Have it soon. I want to be there before you change your minds. Not changing my mind, Ethan said. Me neither, Adriana added. They got married 3 months later in Adriana's backyard, which Emma had helped decorate with every purple and green ribbon they could find. It was small, just close friends, family, and Emma throwing flower petals with aggressive enthusiasm. Jake stood beside Ethan as best man. Emma stood beside Adriana, taking her role very seriously. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Emma raised her hand and everyone's heart stopped. I just wanted to say I think this is good, she announced solemnly. My dad's been happy since he met Adriana, and she lets me paint my room purple, so I think they should definitely get married. The crowd laughed. Adriana wiped at her eyes. Ethan felt his heart might actually burst. When they exchanged vows, Adriana's voice shook. I spent 15 years believing that success meant sacrifice. That you couldn't have it all. The career, the family, the love. I was wrong. You taught me that having it all just means choosing what matters. And you matter. Emma matters. This messy, complicated, beautiful life we've built matters. I love you, and I promise to keep choosing you every day for the rest of our lives. Ethan's turn came next. I used to think playing it safe was smart, that avoiding risk meant avoiding pain, but playing it safe also meant avoiding joy. You taught me that some things are worth the risk, worth the fear, worth the possibility of loss, because the alternative is spending your life wondering what if. And I'm done with what ifs. I'm all in, Adriana, for better or worse, messy and complicated and real. I love you. They kissed while everyone cheered, and Emma threw the remaining flower petals directly at them with impressive force. The reception was in the backyard too, with string lights and terrible dancing, and Jake giving a speech that made Adriana cry and Ethan laugh. He talked about how angry he'd been, how much he'd struggled, and how grateful he was that his mother had been brave enough to choose happiness even when it cost her. To Ethan and Mom, he finished, raising his glass. May you always be this disgustingly in love. Hear, hear, Emma shouted, even though she was drinking juice. Later, when most of the guests had left and Emma was asleep on the couch, Ethan found Adriana standing alone in the garden. Hey, Mrs. Cole, he said, coming up behind her. I kept my name. Mrs. Vale Cole? Just Adriana is fine. He wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. How are you feeling? Happy. Terrified. Like I can't believe this is my life now. Good terrified or bad terrified? Good. Definitely good. She turned in his arms. Thank you. For what? For not giving up on me when I pushed you away. For fighting for this. For showing me what I was missing. You did the same for me. Did I? Yeah. You showed me what it feels like to be truly alive. Not just going through the motions, but actually living. They swayed together in the garden,
No music except the distant sound of traffic and Emma's soft snores from inside. It wasn't the grand romantic moment Ethan had once imagined. It was better. It was real. 5 years later, Emma was 10 and had traded dinosaurs for soccer. Jake was engaged to a wonderful woman he'd met through work. Adriana had started a nonprofit helping young women break into tech, and Ethan had shifted to part-time consulting so he could be more present for Emma's increasingly busy schedule. They were sitting at the dining table one Sunday evening, their weekly family dinner tradition that had somehow stuck, when Emma asked a question that stopped everyone cold.
Dad, do you ever regret it? Regret what, sweetheart? Meeting Adriana the way you did, with all the secrets and Jake being mad and everything. Ethan glanced at Adriana, then at Jake, who was watching with interest. No, he said honestly. I regret the lies, the way we handled it, hurting Jake, but meeting Adriana, falling in love with her, building this life, I'd do it all again, even knowing the cost. Even the hard parts, Emma pressed.
Especially the hard parts, because they taught us something important. What? That love isn't about being perfect or making all the right choices. It's about showing up, being honest, even when it's hard, fighting for what matters. And sometimes, he looked at Adriana, sometimes it's about being brave enough to risk everything for something real. Emma considered this seriously. Is that why you and Adriana work? Because you chose each other even when it was hard? Yeah, that's exactly why. Huh. She went back to her dinner. That's pretty cool, actually. Glad you approve, Adriana said, smiling. Later, after Jake and his fiancée had left and Emma was upstairs doing homework, Ethan and Adriana cleaned up the kitchen together. You know what I realized today? Adriana said, handing him a plate to dry. What's that? We made it. We actually made it. We did. All the people who said it wouldn't work, who judged us for how we started, we proved them wrong. We proved ourselves wrong too, Ethan pointed out. I didn't think we'd survive Jake's anger. You didn't think you deserved happiness. We were both convinced this would end badly. But it didn't. No, it didn't. She set down the dish she was washing and turned to face him. I love you, you know. More now than I did when we got married. More than I did on that balcony when you first cracked through my walls. I love you too. Even when I'm difficult? Especially when you're difficult. That's when you're most yourself. She kissed him, soapy hands and all, and Ethan thought about the long, winding road that had brought them here. The mistakes and the healing, the pain and the growth, the moment when everything fell apart, and the slow, patient work of building it back together. They'd hurt people, made choices they couldn't take back, lost things that mattered, but they'd also found something rare and precious. A love built not on perfection, but on honesty. Not on ease, but on effort. Not on avoiding mistakes, but on learning from them. Emma appeared in the doorway. You guys are gross. You're supposed to be doing homework, Ethan said. I finished. Can we watch a movie? Sure, baby. Pick whatever you want. As Emma ran to the living room to choose, Adriana leaned against the counter, watching Ethan with soft eyes. What? He asked. Nothing. Just thinking about how lucky I am. Pretty sure I'm the lucky one. How about we're both lucky? Deal. They joined Emma on the couch, Ethan on one side and Adriana on the other. Emma sprawled between them with her head on Adriana's lap. Some animated movie played on the screen, but Ethan wasn't really watching. He was too busy memorizing this moment, the weight of his daughter against his side, the sound of Adriana's laughter at something ridiculous on screen, the feeling of being exactly where he belonged. He'd spent years playing it safe, avoiding risk, choosing comfort over possibility. And he'd been miserable. It took falling for the wrong person, or maybe the right person in complicated circumstances, to teach him that safety wasn't the same as happiness, that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was let someone in, even when you knew it might destroy everything else. The damage had been real. Jake had needed years to forgive them. The lies had cost them friendships and peace of mind and countless sleepless nights. But sitting here now, with his family around him and his wife's hand in his, Ethan knew with absolute certainty that it had been worth it. Every difficult conversation, every moment of doubt, every time they'd chosen honesty over comfort, love over fear, each other over the safety of being alone. Because this was what it meant to truly live. Not to avoid pain or chase perfection, but to show up fully, flaws and all, and build something real with another flawed, imperfect person trying to do the same. Emma fell asleep halfway through the movie. Adriana carried her upstairs while Ethan cleaned up, and when she came back down, they stood together at the window, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. "What are you thinking?" Adriana asked, threading her fingers through his. "That I'm grateful for all of it, the good and the bad. Even the part where Jake didn't speak to us for months? Even that. Because it taught us that some things are worth fighting for, worth waiting for. Like us? Like us." She rested her head on his shoulder, and Ethan closed his eyes, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume. In another life, he might have played it safe, stayed in his comfortable routine, never taken the risk. But in this life, this messy, complicated, beautiful life, he'd chosen differently. He'd chosen love, chosen risk, chosen Adriana, and he'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because playing it safe might protect you from loss, but it also guarantees you'll never truly win. And Ethan Cole, father, husband, man who'd spent years just surviving, had finally learned what it meant to actually live, to love imperfectly, to fail and forgive, to build something meaningful from the wreckage of mistakes, to choose again and again the complicated joy of being fully human with another fully human person. That was the lesson he'd learned. That was the truth that mattered. And as he stood there with Adriana in his arms, their daughter asleep upstairs, a future full of ordinary moments and extraordinary love stretching out ahead, Ethan finally understood what he'd been searching for all along. Not perfection, not certainty, not safety, just this. Just love. Just a life worth living.